Hello, Dave Hurwitz here at ClassicsToday.com, here with a rundown of this cube, Claudio Abbado's Berlin Philharmonic legacy, such as it is. Now, I've said before, and I stand by that, I'm going to stick this here so I can look at it while we talk, that Abbado did his best work with the London Symphony. I don't know what it is actually with Italian conductors. They seem to get worse as they get older. I mean, Toscanini was really old, and he wasn't necessarily worse, but he sort of got faster and stiffer. And Muti seems to have gone to pot, and Abbado definitely did. And I don't know. I don't know why it is. But the bottom line with his Berlin Philharmonic recordings is that they are incredibly variable. Incredibly so. And I want to go through, this is 60 discs, and we're going to run down the whole thing. So brace yourself, get something to drink, go to the bathroom now. Abbado, was a fuss budget. Claudio, the fuss budget Abbado. He was a micromanager who only got worse as he got older. He got pickier, and he got more interested in minute details. I have a friend who sat in on some of his London Symphony Orchestra rehearsals, and even then he was irritating as hell. He would sit there and look around and turn pages in the score and play a minute or two and then move on to something else. He was never an orchestra trainer. He was never somebody to galvanize an ensemble. He could be brilliant. Let's make no mistake. He was a great musician in his way, but of a very particular type. And when he came to Berlin, they made a big deal about the fact that he got rid of a third of the players. He replaced them. Yeah, but replaced them with what? That's the problem. Not that they weren't fine musicians, but they were not the same ensemble as they had been under Herbert von Karajan. Obviously, he wanted to put his own stamp on the orchestra. But what was that? What was his stamp? It doesn't seem to show up in these recordings. And so I'm going to take you through them and, one clump at a time, and we'll see where they stand. The first thing on this disc is his Beethoven Symphony Cycle. Now, as you know, he released the Beethoven Symphony Cycle and then withdrew the Beethoven Symphony Cycle in favor of the soundtracks of a series of Beethoven videos that he'd done in Italy, which were about 100 million times better, and except for the ninth. The ninth was the same, but it was supposedly re-edited. The question was, why did he let the junky ones out in the first place? And I have a little story to tell you about that cycle, which may have played some sort of distant role in this. The year that the crappy Beethoven cycle came out was the same year that Barenboim's really terrific Beethoven cycle came out on Teldec. And remember, those were both made in Berlin. Abbado's with the Berlin Philharmonic, and Barenboim's with, Staatskapelle Berlin. They were very, very different, right? Abbado was this sort of light, fluffy, chambery, he turned Beethoven into a composer he could micromanage and fuss with, because that is what he did. Barenboim's were much more in the grand German tradition of Furtwängler, the German Romantics, and they're magnificent, right? So at the Cannes Classical Awards, which I was still running in those days, we decided to give Barenboim a special award for his Beethoven cycle. And as a result of that, one of our participants in the award process flew him out on a private plane because he insisted, and they busted their budget on it, by the way, not that he cared, but he agreed to come personally and receive the award. So we had a whole reception with Barenboim is there, and we're sitting there, and I, of course, as the chairman of the award, have to make the presentation, and I got up there and I said, it is so nice to see somebody making a Beethoven cycle that reflects the grand German Romantic tradition of Beethoven performance, unlike a really mediocre competing version on that other yellow label, also from Berlin. Well, the color drained from Barenboim's face. You could have, all the oxygen was just sucked out of the room. Everybody gasped because, you know, it's an unspoken rule in the performing arts that one should never criticize one performance at the expense of the other. And Barenboim was like going, "Ah, stop!" You know, he was horrified. It was fabulous. And I looked at everybody into the dead silence, and I just said, "Relax, folks. I'm a critic. This is what we do. We're giving him the award because he's better than the other one. Get it? It's an award, right? Everything's fine." Well, anyway, after that whole thing, I mean, it was, I just loved every minute of it, I have to say. But there's nothing more fun than, you know, confronting artists with the fact that they're really there as entertainers and other people get to judge what they do. Ha ha, right? So anyway, Barenboim took his award and moved on. And it was actually at that event where he mentioned to me that he was going to record a Furtwängler symphony, the first. And I said, "No, don't do the first, do the second." That's the one he did. And I'm not taking any credit for that. I'm sure other people were telling him to do the second as well. It had nothing to do with me, but we did discuss it. And he made a great recording of the Furtwängler Second Symphony. Really quite a bit better than Furtwängler's. But that's a whole nother issue, isn't it? So after that, subsequently, we found out that Abbado had withdrawn or wanted withdrawn the first series of Beethoven symphonies, and he came out with these, which are quite good. So we can move on. That's all we need to know, right? Of their type, which is that light, fluffy, chamber-like Beethoven that he decided to do later in his life. Then he did the Beethoven piano concertos. Who were these with? Complete with Pollini. So. They're okay. You know, there are better ones out there. We all know what they are. Then he made a couple of really good discs of incidental music, Beethoven incidental music with the choral fantasy, which, you know, helped them to add things to the new Beethoven Complete Edition. Next comes Brahms. And here, Abbado and Berlin are at their absolute best. Abbado is a fantastic Brahms conductor. He never did anything better in Berlin than this cycle of Brahms symphonies and choral works. They are absolutely wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful performances, uniformly. He actually did a couple versions of the Second Symphony, but that's what matters. The serenades are excellent. The piano concertos come with Pollini and Brendel, and whether you like them depends on how much you like Pollini or Brendel. It's entirely up to you. I'm not a big fan of either, in the Brahms anyway. Again, I think there are better ones available, but you can't fault Abbado. Then there are about a zillion performances, actually 3, of the violin concerto with Shlomo Mintz, Victoria Mullova, and Gil Shaham. The best is probably Gil Shaham. It's exciting and magnificently played, and it came originally with an absolutely great Brahms double concerto with Shaham and the cellist Wang. What's his first name? Yun Wang? Jan Wang? I'm going to embarrass myself on that one because I don't have the album in front of me. It's on the back of the box, and I don't remember the cellist's name. Anyway, it's okay. It's a great double concerto, and the violin concerto is great. I think the Mullova is terrific too. She's a very serious violinist, you know, but I love her playing. She has this dark, sexy tone, and the recordings she made for Philips, I think Sibelius, Shostakovich, they're uniformly wonderful. So's this Brahms. Shlomo Mintz is good, but, you know, I can take it or leave it. Next, well, he did the German Requiem too, pardon me. Forget it. Now, Debussy. Weird disc. It has a suite from Pélias and Melisande, which is really good. I mean, it's good. And Abbado's version of the complete opera was beautiful. And then the Nocturnes, which is just a dud. And he did them fabulously with the Boston Symphony early on in his career. That's what I told you. Earlier is better with these guys. And the Afternoon of a Faun, which is sort of cool and impersonal. So it's a mixed bag. Then there's an absolutely crappy Dvorak New World Symphony. It's just awful. Forget about it. Hindemith's, Mathis der Mahler, and, you know, the symphonic metamorphosis on themes by Weber. I don't know. Again, Abbado just had this obsession with lightness of texture, and the music should be so much more trenchant. I think that's the word, trenchant. You know, it has to have more solidity than Abbado gives it. Everything always had to be kind of light and fluffy with him, and Hindemith is not, as you I'm sure would agree, a light and fluffy composer. Then there's a really rotten Janacek disc containing the Sinfonietta, which he did earlier on Decca pretty well. Not bad. It was pretty good. And an orchestral version of The Diary of One Who Vanished, which I don't believe anybody needs to hear. So we can forget about that one. Oh, yeah. Then, this was fun. Stockhausen's Gruppen, a masterpiece of the squeak bloop style of useless European post-war avant-garde garbage. And that's what it is. And then a couple pieces by Kurtag, which are equally miserable. I mean, the whole disc is just miserable. So if you want to be miserable, then by all means, give that disc a listen to. I don't want to deal with it. Mahler. Okay, here's his Berlin Mahler. This was a real mixed bag. Symphonies number 1 and 9 are very good. I really believe that. I enjoy them. I play them once in a while. They're really very solidly done. I don't think there's any problem there. However, he didn't do 2. He did 2 in Lucerne, and that was nothing special in my view either. But 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, bleh, forget about it. They are, again, these sort of light, short on the big picture. He finds details that he likes. I remember when he did the Fifth Symphony, and the trumpeter in Carnegie Hall, the trumpeter cracked his entrance. That was fun. The whole performance after that was just demoralized. And he also did, I saw him do the Ninth. All he conducted was the second violins. He wouldn't look at anybody else. And the thing about Abbado's Mahler is that when he seizes on a detail that matters, it wakes up for that moment, for that detail. But everybody else plays as though they're embarrassed to be noticed because he's not paying attention. And in these pieces that have so many details, the trouble with a micromanager like Abbado is that you can only micromanage so much at any one time. For every detail or jet of color or inner voice that he plays with, there are 10 that go for nothing at the same time because he won't give up control and let the players play. And that's what happens in these Mahler performances, quite frankly. The Eighth is pretty good. Why? Because, like I've always said about the Eighth, you don't so much need an interpreter as you need a traffic cop. There's so many people doing so much. All you can do is stand there and beat time and hope that they do what they're supposed to do. And in this performance, mostly they do. Next comes a Mozart Requiem, which I also don't think anybody should care about, with Carita Matala and Bryn Terfel. The soloists are good. Okay, that's just fine. In the Mahler business, by the way, there is also the worst ever recording of Das Knaben Wunderhorn with Enzo Viffanato and Thomas Kvastov. Horrible, awful. I mean, the playing is just terrible, and whole parts of the orchestral texture go for nothing, and the soloists are right here in your face. It's just bad, really bad. Then he did some more Mozart arias, motets, and scenes with Strauss orchestral songs with Christine Schaeffer. If you like it, more power to you. You get it for the soloists. Mussorgsky choral and orchestral works, he always did those well. He made a recording of the same music for RCA. It's okay. Prokofiev, Romeo and Juliet excerpts. Not. Another performance that has no impact at all. The playing is just tired. It just sounds tired and bored. Now a bunch of piano concertos. Prokofiev 1 and 3 with Kissin. They were very good. But then there are the ones he did with Argerich. Remember those? Prokofiev 3, Ravel G Major, and the digital Tchaikovsky First, which is fabulous. Absolutely reference versions. His recordings with Argerich really are, they were one of the great concerto duos of our time. All of those are worth having. The Rachmaninoff pianos 2 and 3 with Zilberstein, you can take them or leave them. Strauss orchestral songs with Carita Matala. No, unfortunately, this was Matala not in her best voice. The 4 last songs, it's stressful to listen to. It really is, and kind of unfortunate. Her voice, by the way, doesn't seem to record that well. She's a Kunstdiva. She's a wonderful singer and a great singing actress. But somehow, without the visual element or without a part to really get into and, get excited about, She doesn't seem all that involved. So we get to some more Tchaikovsky. Oh my God. Tempest, Romeo and Juliet, 1812 Overture. Probably the worst Tchaikovsky record ever made in the history of humanity. It is unlistenably bad. Truly, truly atrocious. Then there's some Verdi overtures and preludes, what's not to like, and a really good Falstaff. I mean, that's the kind of opera Abbado could really sink his teeth into because it's all filigree and lightness, and he really gets into it. I mean, he makes the textures come alive, and there's something always interesting for him to pay attention to. And here's the point. The thing he pays attention to is the thing that actually matters, unlike his Mahler. So that's a really good recording, the Falstaff. There's also a disc of Wagner arias with Roberto Alagna, if you like Roberto Alagna. Wagner orchestral music, a great disc. Wonderful, with the Tannhäuser Overture and some Parsifal music, and really, really, absolutely first-rate, gorgeously played. You know, you hear things like that, you wonder, why couldn't these people do it all the time? I mean, what was going on there that they couldn't deliver this regularly? We had a right to expect that level of consistency from him. Then there are, excerpts, Wagner excerpts with Bryn Terfel, and more excerpts with other singers. And if you like Wagner excerpts with, Cheryl Studer and Waltraud Meyer and Siegfried Jerusalem and Bryn Terfel, get them. It's fine. What's to say? Then there are these galas. That was one of them actually, but the other two are also, they're Berlin galas. There's a tribute to Carmen, which for some reason has the Brahms Hungarian Dance No. 5 in it. I guess it's gypsy music, maybe? That's the idea? I don't know. And then there's a Mozart, Bizet, Verdi, Tchaikovsky gala with arias and duets. And, they're all fine. You do get Pletnev doing the Rachmaninoff Paganini Rhapsody on one of these discs. But anyway, that is the box. A box of a couple highs, some unbelievable lows, and a lot of mediocrity. And it's a sad thing, frankly, that has to be Abbado's legacy, but that is what it is. If DG is smart, instead of releasing a complete Abbado on DG box, or Abbado in Vienna and Abbado in Berlin and Abbado in Tauride and Abbado in Aulis and Abbado in Cyprus, and it's like he's like Iphigenia, wherever she went, she got an opera. Well, same thing with Abbado here. He gets a box. They should put together all of his London LSO recordings, including his Decca ones, frankly, and put those in a box, and then you'll have, I think, a memento of a great artist at his very, very best. Thank you, folks, and keep on listening.